listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the JCP, the Just Chris Podcast. What's up, guys? I am your host, Chris Carter. We're back in Raleigh, North Carolina for this week's episode. It's episode 23, which means it's almost episode 24, which means it's almost episode 25, which is a quarter of the way through 100. And the beginning goal was, hey, let's knock out 10 episodes. Let's get to 20 episodes. We can do 50 episodes. No, the goal now is 100. So we're well on the way in a few weeks, quarter of the way through. But like I said, we're back in Raleigh this week after spending the last week in Elkins, which, felt great. It really felt good being back, seeing a ton of old friends, getting Tyler Reed on the podcast, which, by the way, Tyler, I know you're listening to this episode. I'm going to tell you, you've gotten a ton of positive feedback on your episode. Tons of people were saying, how intelligent you were, which, they're not wrong. Tyler, you're like incredible. Look, Tyler, you did an excellent job. A ton of people were impressed with it. And I was satisfied with the episode. I had a good time with you. We talked about dinosaurs, talked about some ice skating stuff, wrestling. I don't know, if you're sitting right now listening through this episode, like, Chris, what are you talking about? Just go back. Go back one episode, listen to me and Tyler's podcast. You will not be let down. Like I said, it was the unedited version, and, I didn't anticipate it getting out of hand to a point of, like, I'm going to have to edit this out. Like, Tyler did a great job, really, staying somewhat, like, PG-13, kind of. I did the same. Had a couple bad words here and there, but we did good with the non-edited version. But while I was up in Elkins, like I said, it felt great seeing people. I had the opportunity to hit the links with my man Thaddeus Breckenridge, who was also on the podcast from the jump. From the beginning, I brought him on quite a few weeks ago, a few months ago, to be honest with you. So him and I got to go out, shoot a round of 18, which felt great. I think I finished at like 55. No, maybe 54. So I did incredibly well. 54? Yeah, Thad finished 56. So, I guess we're both bound for the PGA Tour coming soon. I guess it's just going to add to the one of many talents that Thad and I possess. I don't know. But feels good to be back in North Carolina. This week, it is the first week of the month. And if you're a returning listener to the podcast, you kind of know what goes down the first week of the month. As an accountant, do I need to get into this again? I'm just going to tell you, look, I'm going to tell you that I prioritized the podcast tonight. I managed my time efficiently because I knew this wasn't going to be a week where I skip an episode. I'm going to go out of my way to record this episode. And I've had the notes written down for a few days, and I have been practicing them in the car, going to and from work, just really trying to get it all together. And I'm stoked that I'm doing it now. Now for this week's episode, I just want to highlight on some news that is recently come out. Now, with this news, we're not relating it to finance. We're not relating to anything with the markets or econ. We're talking about podcasting. And, I know I've done my fair share of podcasting talk on episode 2 through 5. But Apple, Spotify, and Anchor recently unveiled a new thing coming out. Well, it began with Apple a few weeks ago on their, I don't really know the name of their premiere day, where they introduced a ton of new products. But they came out with a new ad-free subscription service for podcasts. And, that sounds great. That's awesome that, Apple's doing this. Giving Patreon a competitor. But then, a few days later, maybe a week later, Spotify and Anchor came out with the same thing. They're now in the subscription-based game. So I really think that is going to bring, a new level of podcasting to a ton of people, really worldwide that upload podcasts week after week, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. But I'm excited for it. I did some research into each platform and, what comes with it. And this is kind of like the gist that I got, probably, with all three of them. So similar to any other subscription-based service, for example, we have Patreon, and there's definitely another one, like Onlyfans. I mean, OnlyFans. OnlyFans is a subscription-based service, but we're not talking about that. That's coming. Not really. But with the subscription-based service, you can count on ad-free listening. So very similar to my episodes now, where there's no ad in the middle or no ad at the beginning. With this, the listener won't have any ads whatsoever. And, it really allows the subscribers or the listeners to focus on the story rather than having a break in between the episode, wait 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or with like Joe Rogan podcast, like 5 minutes of ads from the jump. That's not the case now. In addition to ad-free listening, we'll have additional episodes. So rather than what comes out to the public week after week, there's then a step up with another episode, video, really like more content to get what you're paying for. And this gives subscribers more to love with extra episodes or extra content. Next, we have early access to podcasts. And one thing that I picked up with quite a few podcasts that I listen to and watch on YouTube, they come out with the audio version first, and then typically a few days later, they'll come out with the video version. Or sometimes they don't come out with the video version at all, and they leave that to Patreon or any other subscription-based service to be able to, see the video. So this will give subscribers early access to audio, video, whatever else you want to share early. And then lastly, we have archived episodes. So this will allow listeners access to recent episodes that have been archived, hidden from, the general listener. And, I think it's a pretty good idea. Now, if you're a fan of Just Chris Podcast, like, you've been following Just Chris Podcast for a minute, there's something that I do have archived. I'm not gonna spill the beans on what I got archived. But if you've been following it, you're gonna know, what I archived, and I'm gonna bring that episode back in the future. And I think I'm gonna do like a review of my first podcast on the podcast. We'll put up a video with it as well. I really wish I would have filmed it from the jump, but that was a pretty big step. I didn't start filming until like 10, maybe 11. Yeah, episode 10 or 11. I don't know. But, we have the archived episodes, early access, additional episodes, and then ad-free listening. And it comes at a price. Now, with Apple, your first year, Apple will take 30% of your revenue. So you make $10, they're taking 30 of it. Okay. Second year, third year, and so on, they're only taking 15%. So they're taking half of that. They're taking $15 or $1.50 out of the $10, which isn't bad. Now with Spotify and Anchor, that's a little different because Spotify and Anchor is really trying to up Apple Podcasts, and I don't blame them. Now, with their subscription service that they're releasing, they are coming in 3 levels. So there's 3 different tiers that you pay for. The first one is $2.99. I mean, not bad. It's like you just got to give up 1 cup of coffee a month. Not terrible. $4.99, so that's like a McChicken, McDouble, and then a large drink. And then $7.99, I don't know what, probably like a Chick-fil-A meal. I don't know. Probably have a Chick-fil-A meal for $7.99. So really, it's not too out of the park, I guess. But, I'm looking forward to, like I said, I'm looking forward to the future of this and really seeing what it brings to the podcasting space worldwide. I think podcasts will continue to grow exponentially like they've done in years past. I mean, starting from, I don't know, say 10 years ago, the number of people podcasting then compared to now, just like my friend Jenny said it, and I said this in a recent episode, every single white guy has a podcast, and every single girl has an OnlyFans. So it is what it is. But this will really bring like the next level to podcasts. Like we're gonna see a lot more monetization when it comes to this, which is leading me into the next topic. Guys, I recently hit a pretty large milestone in my podcast with the number of listeners that I've received thus far, 22 episodes in, and I'm happy with it. I went through, and I'm not one to look at analytics, but I went through and I counted. I have listeners in 16 different countries. 16 different countries, that's kind of wild. You know, we got North America covered. We got a little bit of South America covered. We have Europe covered. And then we got a little bit of Asia. So, you know, I really got listeners worldwide. And it's a crazy feeling knowing that like these people, like if you're listening to this right now and you're in Chile, what's up? Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Just Chris Podcast. If you're listening to this in Japan, shout out to you. If you're listening to this in France or Italy, you know, you get the point. But that being said, now that I'm really starting to begin to gain a following somewhat, kind of, I will say this. You know, I've just done research. I'm not interested in this. I've looked into advertisements for the episode, you know, just to really kind of give me a little level up, a little boost in income. And it's not that easy. So I will say that. It's not that easy. What I will say, though, is, listen to this, the moment I'm offered a penny for any type of advertisement, I'm selling out. That's it. Like, whatever company it is, they got me, I'm selling out. No, probably not. Not really. Maybe not immediately. But no, this is what I do have. So I am introducing, very similar to what we talked about, I now have you can do a subscription-based service where it's not so much like you're going to receive extra content, but you're going to be helping out the podcast. You are going to be helping out the podcast, and this is going to help fund any type of production costs, equipment, software. So by contributing each month, you know, not only are you going to help your listening experience, but you're going to help my production experience. You're going to see the output and, you know, how should I word this? You're going to see a level up in the podcast, which is something that, you know, I'm really looking forward to do for all of you, for all of my listeners, and for all of my listeners in 16 different countries. So that being said, I have included the link in the bio of this episode, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker. There's a couple more. I can't remember what the other ones are. But you will see that link in my description. It will be at the very top, just so like you cannot miss it. And you click the link, and here's how it's broken down. So like I said, this is only like a donation thing. Like you're not going to receive anything extra. That will be coming in the future. But here's the levels to this. Now, if you're interested and you're sitting here like, okay, like Chris, this is something I can get behind. Like, I'll walk you through it. Okay. So you're going to pull out your debit card right now. I won't walk you through every step. But if you're interested in this, look, 3 levels. And the first one we're starting at is 99 cents a month. 99 cents a month, like really that's not bad. Like you're going to pay more for a McChicken with tax than you would paying 99 cents a month to help support Just Chris Podcast. Okay. That's not bad, Chris. I could get behind 99 cents a month. Next step we have, so you're kind of like a baller on a budget. We got $4.99 a month. And, you know, that is a McChicken, McDouble, and then, you know, a large Sprite, extra large Sprite. $4.99 a month. You just take away one of those meals, McDonald's, out of the 31 days, 30 days, 28 days if it's February. That's okay. Then the next level, this is the final level. This, you know, I'm really not anticipating a bunch of these, but we got the $9.99 a month donation to Just Chris Podcast. And look, I'm going to tell you, even if you donate 99 cents, I'm going to get your address and I'm going to personally write you a thank you letter. And then if you're paying $9.99 a month, I will personally drive to you. Probably not. but I will make a very big deal out of it. If you're paying $9.99 a month, I'm going to bring you on the podcast. I'm going to call you up. We're going to get an interview set up and you're going on the podcast. Okay. So up to $9.99 a month, you're going to receive a thank you letter in the mail. And then, I don't know, we'll figure it out. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. $9.99 a month. I'm not only going to send you a letter in the mail, but I'm going to call you and I'm going to get you on the podcast. Or if you live close by, I'm going to bring you on the podcast. We're going to be in the studio right here. So that's something I'm looking forward to. But like I said, this is just a donation thing only, and it's going to help fund any type of production costs. For example, tonight I had to go through and I had to go on Amazon and I had to buy a new mic stand. Not because this mic stand isn't good. This mic stand is great. I love it. I'm having a guest this week on the podcast, and I really just, we got to make it look good. We got to make it look professional, so we will have 2 mic stands. Pretty dope, okay? And I'm looking forward to the episode this week. I'm not going to spoil who's coming on the podcast. Recording it on Friday, so look forward to that. Hopefully be out by Monday, Sunday night, maybe, depending on, how busy my weekend gets. But yeah, if you take the time to click the link in the bio and set a little donation aside for Just Chris Podcast, I'll be extremely thankful for that. And, like I said, there's some things that are going to come in hand with it. But any questions, you know how to reach out to me, okay? Now, I feel like I say the word now a ton in the podcast. Okay, so to transition into the next topic, out of talking about subscription-based services, we're going to recap on the Tyler Reed episode because, I just feel like I have a ton to say about Tyler Reed coming on the podcast. I was shocked by it because we get into Elkins Thursday night. We get in probably around 2:30, and Tyler Reed had work that day. So he was pretty close to being knocked out Thursday night. Friday, he had work that morning until 6:15 that night, which we ran into the problem where we couldn't record the podcast on Friday. It's kind of a bummer. And then Saturday, Tyler Reed being a fully grown man that has to pay rent and utilities, he's working on Saturdays, didn't get done till I think 6:15 or 7:15. So we really didn't get the opportunity on either of those days to record the podcast. And then Sunday morning, we went out to breakfast with the gang. All the close friends, we all went to Bob Evans for a little farewell meal. And then once we got home, Tyler and I sat down at the house and we banged out the episode. Now, one thing that I'll definitely say this. It was not easy at all getting the podcast going. It was actually pretty difficult. We'd get the camera rolling, we'd get the audio going, something would happen to the camera, the audio would cut out, vice versa. In addition to that, Tyler Reed getting a little camera shy, Tyler Reed getting a little mic shy. And I started the episode before even really telling him, just to ease into conversation. And then later I went through and I started the video. And as you heard in the last episode, the very first thing that Tyler Reed says, I didn't expect this, but this is so much harder than I thought. Just talking the mic or something like that. Tyler says something like that. And he's right. It is not easy to just get in front of the mic and then just do it. But like I told him, practice. Otherwise, we have to ease into the conversation rather than just coming right out of the gate saying tell me about wrestling. I don't know. You have to ease into it. And it was awesome getting to hear Tyler Reed. To be honest, I've known Tyler Reed for a few years now, more than a few years. And I learned stuff about Tyler that I didn't know prior to the podcast. And then I had friends and family point out stuff oh, Tyler said this. I didn't know that. And I thought about it. I was like, whoa, I didn't know that either. So it was pretty crazy. We gotta get Tyler back on the podcast. I wish I would have had more mics with me because we had a house full of people at the time. As you heard, Matt Nelson walked into the podcast. Gavin Burnham was in on the podcast talking a little bit about sports with us. Then in the other room we had my sister's boyfriend, Colby, which you guys know Colby. Colby was on for episode 20, the big deal episode. He was the one that drove the Hellcat. You guys know Colby. So, I mean, another thing to hit back on, the donation thing that I've set up for the podcast, it can help buy new mics too. We can bring more people onto the podcast. I could have a round table of stuff for the podcast, though it will be extremely hectic and very challenging to edit. I think it'd be pretty cool. But you know, baby steps, 1.99 donation a month at a time. Yeah, so I do wish, you know, I would have had more equipment to bring those guys onto the podcast, because I mean, just Matt Nelson himself, like, he could talk for ages. Gavin could talk for ages. I thought Gavin could provide a ton of good input on the conversation when we were talking about Corridor H, the highway that goes through West Virginia into DC. And I brought up how there was an endangered species which was the reason why they had to stop production or whatever on the highway. Gavin could have provided a lot, but it is what it is. You know, there's always another time for more people on the podcast. And actually, you know, outside of my parents and a couple friends saying how much they enjoyed Tyler on the podcast and how much they enjoyed hearing my guests on the podcast, I had a few people contact me today saying, like, Chris, you should bring more guests on. Like, we really enjoy, like, we love the solo episodes, which, I mean, how could you not? But we do like listening to what other people have to say, which, you know, sparked the reason for why I'm having a guest come on Friday. You know, they're coming to the studio. I have a great show set up for that. And, you know, that's the goal. Like, I would love to get more people on the podcast, still continue to do solo episodes, but I think we can make it happen. I think we can definitely make it happen. And yeah, that's what I have for a little recap on Elkins, West Virginia, and Tyler Reed and the whole gang. Tyler, again, thanks for letting me stay at the house. Luke asked, thanks for letting me stay at your house. Matt Nelson, thanks for letting me stay at the house, baby. Okay. Now, last real topic I want to get into. See, I said it again. I started with now. Last real topic I want to get into, okay? In the podcast last week, Tyler and I talked about music festivals. And we talked about going out of state for these large events. And that led into a conversation around vaccines. And the both of us, we both said, like, we weren't for vaccines. We weren't against vaccines. You know, we were kind of indifferent about it. But I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, I made it happen. I registered, and I'm going to tell you, it was so much easier than I thought it would be to do this. Now, I registered online to get the vaccine, and what do you know, like that evening, I'm walking through downtown Raleigh, and I had someone approach me and say, hey, you looking for the COVID vaccine? Moderna or Pfizer? And I was like, you know what? Moderna, why not? Let's get the Moderna one. And right there, I'm telling you, right there in the streets, took out the needle, flicked it a couple times. He said, all right, get ready. Cleaned it off with a little alcohol swab. And I got my vaccine right there. Didn't even have to show ID. I already got vaxxed up on the streets of Raleigh. So crazy, but in reality, no. In reality, I got vaxxed and waxed. Shout out to TMG for that. No, I did get vaccinated this past week, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it on my drive home. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to spend the time in Florida around tons of people, and it seems like Florida never really went into lockdown to begin with, it'd probably be a smart decision to get vaccinated. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, we can all think of, like, what's the worst that could happen? But what's the worst that could happen if you didn't get the vaccine? You know, it kind of goes either way. And for the argument where people say, like, oh, now you've been microchipped, like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are tracking you, whatever. Cool, bro. Let Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos track me. Because listen to this. Everywhere you go, no matter, you know, where you are, who you're with, you're being tracked. And you want to know how you're being tracked? I mean, just like, put your hand in your right pocket, or if you're left-handed, put your hand in your left pocket, and you're going to feel it. Your phone. I'm telling you, everywhere you go, your phone is tracking you. And it's crazy because the way it's set up is, for example, an app like Google Maps, you think that it's just tracking, like, say you want to get to work and you want to check the traffic. Okay, cool. Set it like that. But Google Maps knows your location. It knows your driving habits. It knows where you're going. And that's just Google Maps. And you have tons of other apps that are tracking your location all the time. All the time, they're tracking your location. They know what you do on a daily basis. And even if you don't have your phone on you, like, odds are they're going to guess correctly on what you're doing at that specific time on that day. I mean, we've all had smartphones for at least 5 to 6, 7, 8 years. So you'd think that these phones have really picked up on where we're going at 8:30 in the morning. I don't know, wherever we're at. And it's going to know when we get in our car to leave for work. It's going to know when we're about to leave work. You're being tracked all the time. And I hate to go off on this tangent about being tracked through the vaccine, but I think it's all some BS. Look, okay. So I did get the vaccine. I got one of two this past week. I went online, we registered, went to the place, got vaxxed up, and they said, all right, sit down for 15 minutes just to make sure like there's no crazy side effects. And I did. Here's what happened. I sat down for about 3 to 4 minutes and I said, I ain't no bitch, like this vaccine ain't gonna take me. And I sat there for like a minute or two more and I was like, no, that's it. I'm cured. I'm done. I'm ready. I'm leaving. 5 minutes, I was in and out. Now, I don't know if that's something I should brag about, but the vaccine didn't get me. I could have gone 15 minutes without leaving, but it would have been no different than me leaving after 5 minutes. Mildly unsafe, maybe, but I'm here today. Now, the only real side effect that I saw from the vaccine, and I didn't notice it until it was pointed out to me, was I was extremely tired all weekend. Now, this can also be contributed to the fact that I slept 2.5 hours on Friday night, then went to work Saturday morning, or I slept all day Saturday once I got off work and then stayed up late, then went to bed late, then woke up early. But last night, Sunday night, I was asleep by 9:30. So, I don't think it's so much of a bad thing that I got to catch up on sleep. But that was the only like real side effect I saw, other than just like a beeping in my head, which is just like the microchip just beeping, letting Jeff Bezos know what I'm doing. Yeah. So that's how I'm feeling about the vaccine. Like, give me hate if you want for getting the vaccine. Don't give me hate. Praise me for getting the vaccine. Whatever floats your boat. But I know that, I'm going to feel somewhat safer going to Florida now. And by the time I go, I'll have the second vaccine. So that's that. Now, I did give a little shout out to TMG because they said in a recent podcast talking about getting vaxxed, waxed, and saxed. That might not make sense to some of you, but TMG, those meat guys, tiny meat gang, whatever you want to call them, I'm going to tell you. I am going to tell you because, I get excited every time I think about this. I've been following Cody Cohen, Noel Miller since they've been on Vine, followed them to YouTube, followed Cody into his solo podcast, followed Noel into the podcast that they have together. I kind of been a stan for the Tiny Meat Gang for a while. And last year, my sister asked me, she said, hey, do you want to see TMG in Durham? I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, let me look up the date. Unfortunately, that interfered with a certain weekend that I had going on at school where, I could not leave Elkins that weekend. And I was like, no, it's not going to work, unfortunately. Now, even more fortunate for us, in the most unfortunate way, the pandemic kind of took over and their tour was canceled or postponed for the summer. And I came across the tickets the other day when I was on Spotify. And boy, let me tell you, these things were cheap. Kind of cheap. I mean, affordable. Very affordable. And I'm sitting dead center stage not too far, not too close. I'm going to see the boys, my short kings, August 28th. So I am super excited about that. I'm going with Alexis, with Gabby, and with Colby. Because we're all pretty big stands for the Tiny Meat Gang. We're stands for the meat guys. So looking forward to that. That is, that's all the upcoming news that I have. The vaccine was kind of a big step, and I was very, very hesitant to bring it onto the podcast. But you know what? Why not? Why not? Really? So that is what I have for this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the link to donate to the podcast, the link to donate to your boy and to help fund any type of production costs, it's going to be the first one in the description of the episode. So seriously, take a second, check it out. Like, what are you going to lose by, donating 99 cents a month, $4.99 a month? If you're the true GOAT, $10.99 a month. And if you do that, ladies and gentlemen, I will drive to your house and probably kiss you. No, vaccinated only. Okay, but that is what I have for this week's episode of Just Chris Podcast. Guys, thank you for listening. Stay tuned to the podcast, and if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, whether you're watching this on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, wherever. Subscribe to the podcast, rank 5 stars, leave it a review if you're really feeling it, because, it's going to help me, it's going to help you, it's going to help progress the podcast along. So, again, guys, thank you so much for listening. Any questions, comments, concerns, you know how to reach me at justchrispodcast@gmail.com. And I will see you guys all next week with my very special guest. And, I think he's going to bring a lot to the show. But until then, you guys all take care and talk to you soon.